What if you still have got something to prove? What if you still got a contribution to make? What if you still want to help people out? You should have that freedom to choose. We've earned the right to choose what we want to do next in what is and what can be the most exciting period of your life. So why shouldn't you be able to do that? So Refirement came from that because the women that I spoke to were like all fired up and raring to go. So it just sort of was the next obvious step, really.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, business coach and value whisperer, and I'm delighted that you're here for another episode in our Women Empowering Women season. Here on the show, we are looking at what does it take for us as women to grow our business but inspire others in the process. What are other people doing? Where can we get our inspiration from? How can we dream bigger, be bold, and achieve everything that we set out to achieve, and very possibly a lot more along the way too. So today we're speaking with Wendy Garcarz, who I discovered as I'm doing my research into giving a great TEDx talk, and someone in my community recommended her talk, and instantly I was like, I need to get Wendy on the show because she's all about how there is a big gap between women over 55 are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the UK, but they have significant challenges in helping them get started and growing their business. So we're going to dive into what does it take for women in their midlife who are starting a business, what does it take for them to succeed, and what can we be doing to support each other in that process. Before we dig into that, I do want to invite you to join the Dream Clients Club. This is my community where you will already find a lot of women over 50 who are building amazing businesses, who are there to support you. And you'll also get lots of tools, tips, inspiration, training, challenges to help you grow your business, to really understand how you can whisper your value through your marketing, through your communications, through every action that you take in your business, so that you can have an impact, feel yourself, be authentic, and feel proud of the impact that you're having. So do come and join us. You find us at melittacampbell.com/club. It's completely free, and every week we continue the conversation from this podcast in the group there. So I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on what Wendy has to say. So that's everything from me for now. Let's bring Wendy into the room. So hi, Wendy, it's great to have you with us today.
Hello, lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And I discovered you fairly recently because I'm giving a TEDx talk next month, and I asked my community, what talks have you listened to recently that were brilliant that I can listen to and get all fired up and inspired by? And yours came out and I watched it and I was like, oh, I have to get Wendy on the show because you were really talking about what does it take for women over 55 to succeed in business? What systemic things are missing? What was missing in terms of our own skill set and mindset? And I loved that. I thought, yeah, my audience is going to love this too. And this show started out as the Driven Female Entrepreneur podcast, specifically to bring more female role models to the wider community. Because when I started out on my own business, I was like, where is everybody? You know, there's all these networks for corporate women and young women and women in all different situations, but there was none really dedicated to female entrepreneurs, and especially those who are a little bit older as well. So I love that that was one of your recommendations. Yeah, so that was really the foundations of this podcast, to inspire more women, help empower them with the stories of other women, what it's taken for us to succeed in different ways. And I love that what has come out of that is there is no one way, but at the same time, the advice on what it takes for us to put ourselves in a position where we have given ourselves the best chance of success is consistent. And it was consistent with your report as well, which was brilliant. But your report goes a bit further. So I'm looking forward to digging into that. Before we do, I would love it if you could introduce the audience to you and your work. What drove you to create this report in the first place?
I've been in business for about 30 odd years, and I've worked in corporates, with corporates, public sector organisations and SMEs and entrepreneurs. And as I say, I've been doing that for a very long time. But as I started to age and get older, I'm 64 now, what I was interested in was the number of times that people asked me questions that were absolutely focused on my age. And I couldn't understand that because the difficulty is with stereotypes is they tell you nothing about the ambition, the passion, the energy of that person. They sort of put you in a box. And I've never liked being put in a box. And so this started to happen from, I think it first happened when I was 58. And it then just started to ramp up a little bit. And it was a common thing that people used to say to me, aren't you thinking of retiring yet? And I just think, no, why would I? I've still got loads to do. And it kept happening. And then I read, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I'm always reading stuff. And I read the Rose Report that was delivered in 2019. And a line in that just absolutely staggered me. And it said that if women started and scaled businesses at the same rate that men do, we could be worth 250 billion pounds to our economy. And I was just bowled over by that. So I did a bit more digging, and in the report, it talked a little bit about the fastest growing group is the 16 to 25-year-olds, which you'd sort of expect. But the second fastest group is the over 55s. And I thought, that's intriguing. I'm going to do a bit of research on that. So at the beginning of the year, I decided to ask women what their lived experience was to try and understand if those barriers were just happening to me or if other people were experiencing them. And if I'm honest, Melitta, I would have been really happy if I'd have had a couple of hundred responses. 1,600 women responded, and I was just knocked out. And what came out of it was, first of all, the absolute wealth of experience, of wisdom, of skill, capability, all of this stuff that we women have these fantastic transferable skill sets as we're older, and yet we don't really appreciate them. We don't have confidence in them. We don't talk about them. And I was taken aback by this because some of the stories were just awesome. I had a lady who responded who became a TikTok influencer for women's health and well-being at 73 years of age, which I just loved. There was a lady who was still an author, published author. She was in her 80s, still with loads of stories to tell. So there was lots around resilience and women sort of bouncing back and overcoming those obstacles. But the thing that really surprised me and angered me, if I'm honest, was the institutional discrimination that women undergo. And so for lots of women, if they decide they're going to set up a business and they're over 55, some high street banks will really put barriers in the way for them to set up a business account because they are seen as high risk. And of course, then when we started to look at the investment pot, I mean, your listeners probably already know that out of all of the investment capital that is available, less than 2% goes to women at the moment. Less than 2%. But what is really shocking is that I couldn't find a single example of significant investment going to a woman entrepreneur who was over 55. And so I was just outraged at that, and I thought we needed to do something about that. And so the report was put together and then circulated to try and get that message across, really. And to say there are things that we can do. We don't just have to accept that. So, yeah, I wanted to do something about that. I thought that by looking at the research and sharing that, it would trigger women to say, actually, does that apply to me? Should I be doing something different? And so that's why I wanted to do that. Then the TED Talk came along, and the response for that was phenomenal. And lots of people said, wow, it was like you were talking to me. So I thought that was lovely. But then the other thing that happened was the refirement movement. It was sort of the next natural step, really.
Yeah, and I love the title, Refirement.
That came from the report because it was really clear that when you use those terms about retirement, it's because people just make the assumption you're tired out, you want to put your slippers on or you want to spend your afternoons at the local garden centre with a cup of coffee. And I thought, do you know what? If that floats your boat, that's absolutely fine and you should be able to do that. But what if you're not that person? What if you still have got something to prove? What if you still got a contribution to make? What if you still want to help people out? You should have that freedom to choose. We've earned the right to choose what we want to do next in what is and what can be the most exciting period of your life. So why shouldn't you be able to do that? So refirement came from that because the women that I spoke to were like all fired up and raring to go. So it just sort of was the next obvious step, really.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I've turned 50 this year, and I was speaking to someone in my network who just turned 70, and she said, we were at a party and thinking, well, what does 70 look like these days? Because
Yeah.
they all had so much energy, so many ideas, and the same, I remember thinking, God, 50 is really old. And now I'm at 50, it doesn't feel old at all. I'm like, okay, this really is midlife. We've got another 50 years to go if we continue the way we're going, but there's a lot ahead to look forward to. So the idea that in 5 years' time, I'm expected to slow down at all is terrifying, quite frankly.
I agree with you. And I think that the one of those massive assumptions is that when you are over 50, your brain goes to sleep, you're devoid of ideas, you're devoid of any passion, any ambition. Well, that just blatantly isn't true. And so for me, it was around starting to think around how we could spread that message and how we could give women confidence in their own ability to do some of that stuff. Because for me, a lot of the time, it is just their confidence that stops them doing it. There's no good reason for them not starting a business, scaling a business, going out and doing whatever their passion is. It's simply the belief and the confidence that they can do it.
Yeah, exactly. I specialize in helping my clients really with their marketing and sales process. But with that comes the whole initial setup of your company. How do you communicate that value through everything that you do? But in the process of running that for several years, I kept bumping up against this idea of women like, but can I really do this? Do I have permission? And oh, I haven't done that before. And I realized, but you have. That, oh, well, I'm a teacher. I've never had to build a business. Like, but if you've had to manage children and develop curriculums for them and plans and see that that gets done and measure that, I mean, everything about that is aligned with building a business. So you're right, you don't always see just how transferable your skills are. I don't think any woman really gets to 50 plus and doesn't already have all the skills they need to build a business. It's just maybe bringing it together and thinking about it slightly different. But yeah, that confidence part was a big issue. So I then trained to be a mindset coach on top of that. So I had the skills to guide them through that, not just relying on my own experience. But is there anything that you've noticed makes a big difference for women in terms of confidence and not waiting for permission? I know that's been was really drummed into our generation growing up. We've been told so often, you can't do that, you're a girl. We were taught to be good girls, basically. And good girls don't go out there and change the world and start businesses, apparently. So how can we rewrite that for ourselves?
I think there are two things. I've had a mantra all of my working life, whether I've worked in corporates, whether I've been an independent consultant, whatever. And this one mantra has really served me well. And it's easier to get forgiveness than it is to get permission. So if you wait for permission, hell's going to freeze over first. So you just think to yourself, go and do it. And do you know what? Most of the time, people won't even notice. They'll just accept what you're doing and they won't even notice. And on the odd occasion, when somebody says, well, should you really have done that? Then it's ever so easy to go, do you know what? That wasn't my intention. I'm sorry, and try a different way. So that for me is the mantra. Don't let somebody else or the fear of somebody else saying, well, should you be doing that, stop you from having a go. That's the first thing. The second thing for me is, and I say this to all of the female clients that I work with, regardless of whatever their age is, and that is be curious. If you're nothing else, be curious. So ask questions, find out, because I'm a great believer that while you're asking questions, you're learning. And I don't think people grow old. I think they get old when they stop growing. And for me, it's about really learning from every person you meet, from every situation you're in, you will find something, a little nugget in there that you didn't know before. And all of that adds to the rich tapestry that is your experience, your skill, your knowledge. And so to go through life, just keeping adding to that reservoir that you naturally have is a great way, because then if you decide you're going to do something, you're going to set up a business or you're going to scale an existing business and you hit a roadblock, something in that reservoir will help you overcome it.
Yeah.
So you just have to keep topping it up all of the time, because the world moves on. One of the strengths I think that women of our age share is that we've been through massive amounts of change. I'm 64, and some of the younger people that I come up against and work with talk to me about, well, can't you do this? Well, when I was starting out, you couldn't do that because there was no internet. You didn't have a mobile phone unless you were on anabolic steroids and you could lift that battery pack that you had to carry around with you in a suitcase. You know, our lives have changed so much in the last 30 years, in just the last generation. And yet we've coped with that change, and we will cope with the next 30 years change because it's what we do. We are adaptable, we're agile. Women, it's no accident that we are multitaskers because we have to be. The world throws us stuff and we just solve the problems and move on. So for me, the more that you can keep your skill set tuned and the more you can be aware of what your capability and what your skill is and feel confident in that, then the better, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the most challenging part in my life was when I started my first business. And well, at first, like, I don't know if I can do this, but then I just went out to my network and said, hey, I kind of want to do this. Anyone need me? And that was the only piece of marketing I ever did. For 8 years, I was fully booked, which was brilliant. But I think the first 2 or 3 years was great. I had a young family, I was working flexibly around them, and it was good. But then I found that I was just saying yes to any work that came my way, and it was all very easy. There was no challenge. I wasn't learning. I wasn't putting any time, not just into my self-development, but my self-care as well. I was giving to everybody else and not for myself.
Yeah.
And that was the point where I really struggled and went close to burnout. And the biggest realization for me was that I wasn't learning anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was the big thing that I changed. But when we get to like 55 and we are still curious and we are still learning, I think this is the first time that we get to create success on our own terms or for ourselves. That's what I hear from a lot of
Yeah.
my community. That's the big opportunity. They don't have to micromanage or micro watch these young kids anymore. They have that time and space and they want to do something meaningful with that. So we have this big opportunity. We have more time than ever before. So what holds us back? Is it just the self-doubt because we haven't done this before and we perhaps don't have a network of other people that have done this before to inspire us? Or is there anything else that you think stands in the way?
I think that's part of it, but I think there's something else that comes before that.
Mm.
And I think that we spend so much time in our early lives being and doing for everybody else. By the time we get to this age, genuinely, I think lots of women struggle to find out what their passion is. I don't think they understand what floats their boat. I don't think they understand sometimes what gives them joy. I don't think they understand how to have fun, because I think that they've spent so much time doing for everybody else, all of their desires and needs have gone to the bottom of the pile. So when I'm working with women, one of the first things that I say to them is spend as much time as you need to finding out what floats your boat, what gives you joy. Because if you're not building that into a new business opportunity, you won't stick to it. It won't give you what you're looking for. You might be busy, like you talked about, you might have customers coming through the door, but actually it won't scratch that itch that you've got, really.
Yeah.
And so I say to people, spend some time finding out what gives you joy and then look at how you can monetize that. How can you turn that into a business idea? And for me, one of the commonalities of women of this group is that they've always got ideas. They can always find a way of monetizing that. That's not the problem. I think for them, it's they want to live a life with purpose. They want to give something back. And so you have to work around how you can do that and monetize what gives you joy. And there is always an answer. There's always an answer. But for me, that has to be the starting point.
Yeah. And for anyone in that position, we have a real gift for you, because the first episode in this series, Michelle Murphy was looking at how do you find that spark, that passion? And she asked three brilliant questions, but one was, which I loved, what would you do if you were bold? And I was like, I love that question so much.
Yeah.
So go and listen to that episode. If you're not quite sure where to start, Michelle will guide you through that process. But yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. And there's one thing that jumped to my mind that I thought, oh, but would this stand in people's way? And if so, what would you say to someone who is feeling yes, but, and starting to feel guilty for doing something just for them? Because maybe for, as you said, most of their adult life, they've been giving to others, and then suddenly taking that time for themselves doesn't really feel like we should do that sometimes. So what would you say to the woman that's saying, yes, but I feel guilty?
So I think that guilt is a complete and utter wasted emotion.
Oh,
I think
totally.
it's the equivalent of drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. I think that guilt only affects the holder of it, doesn't affect anybody else. And I have eradicated guilt from my life. There are some times when I have regrets, but that's completely different. So I think that you've got to get over yourself. Guilt is it's a construct that other people put in place. It's a manipulative tool. And you don't need anybody else to make you feel guilty. You do that all on your own. It doesn't serve any purpose. It's a waste of molecules. So get rid of it and say to yourself, I've done enough in my life to earn the right to choose, and you have. And if that means putting yourself at the top of the pile, then do that because, you've probably, it's been several years, or maybe in some people's lives, several decades since you've done that. And it's your time now. So do it.
Yeah, amazing, brilliant advice. So we are going out there, doing it anyway, and asking for forgiveness instead of permission. We're not feeling guilty and we're being curious. What else can we do to help, I guess, not just ourselves to succeed, but I think, as I said, I did a lot of work with women's networks back in the day. And I think the big opportunity is when we work together and support each other. Is there anything we can plug into already and support, or is there something we could do to consciously encourage more women to join this? Because I think that's where our strength can be. As you said, we're the second biggest growing market of business owners. So how can we really make sure that we're just as successful as those 16 to 25-year-olds?
I think part of that is about make use of networking. I don't know about you, but when I was sort of in my early 20s, I am an introvert. I know lots of people really struggle with that, but I'm an introvert. And you know exactly what I mean by that, don't you?
Yeah, I was just
Um,
pointing at my book, Shy Girl's Guide to Networking, which
yeah,
really was my journey to go from that 20-year-old who just wouldn't say anything and
yeah,
just would die in a networking situation to like starting three businesses with no capital, very little support, just because I had a brilliant
yeah.
network to turn to. So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it's about make use of that networking. By the time we're in our late 50s, we don't care. A lot of those hang-ups that we carried with us in our early 20s, they're gone, quite rightly. When you're networking, be curious, listen to what people are saying, and actually hear what they're saying and allow yourself to have your curiosity piqued. Because I don't go to a networking meeting ever without coming away with at least one or two one-to-ones because people are inherently interesting. And if something really piques my interest, then I want a proper conversation with them. So I'll book those. And those are really important to me because while I'm meeting new people, while I'm learning about what their passions are, what they do, what their differentiators are, I'm actually extending the pool of possibility for me. So I know that I might not do anything with that information now, but further down the line, I'll meet somebody else and I can see potentially collaboration, and somebody will pop into my head and I'll say, oh, why don't we get together, the three of us, and have a talk about this? Because I think we live in a world of possibilities, and networking is the way that we can join the dots up. And so for women, I would strongly say get over yourself, because that, shyness, it's not valid anymore. You've got enough life experience to feel confident in who you are and what you do. And you know what? If other people want to judge you, that's their problem, not yours. I've lived my life with a whole rake of stereotypes. I'm 4'11", I'm blonde, I'm overweight, I'm a female business owner, I speak like an extra from Peaky Blinders. You can't see me without putting some of those stereotypes in place. But woe betide the people that do, because the best thing you can do is underestimate me, because it gives me freedom to go off and do what I want to do. So I would say get over those stereotypes. If people want to judge you, they will, regardless. But it doesn't have to affect you. Go out there and be glorious and be questioning and be curious and find out about people, because there's a possibility out there waiting for you. If you're not talking to people, you won't discover what it is.
Yeah, the number of opportunities I've found through networking, the amazing people that have introduced me to other amazing people,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have known any of this. And I live in the Swiss Alps and in the middle of nowhere in a French-speaking region, and my French is okay, but keeping up with a networking conversation in French is challenging. So I use LinkedIn, and I make a point of finding people who
Yeah.
seem really interesting and saying, hey, fancy a virtual coffee? So it doesn't even need to be like a big formal event that you go to. You can find your way of finding people to get inspired by. And yeah, I am never disappointed by any conversation I have with another woman in any capacity, because it's always so fascinating and you learn so much about other people and yourself from those conversations as well. It's brilliant.
I would agree with that. And for me, it's one of the reasons why I prefer female networking. I do mix networking, but I suppose my spiritual home is with women's networking. And the reason for that is there's, in the women's networks that I've attended, all of them apply in this. There is not a whiff of testosterone anywhere. So no ego, no competitiveness. I go into rooms and all those women want to do is support each other, listen to each other, help if they can, learn where they can, and raise each other up. And I can't think of a better way of spending a couple of hours a day, but being immersed in that sort of positivity. I think we are naturally optimistic. We are solution givers. And so we're always looking for those opportunities. And immersing yourself with other women who have been there, done it, and got the t-shirt is absolutely, it's worth its weight in gold for me. So get out there. Don't let the fear of what it might be stop you. Get out there and experience it, and you will be pleasantly surprised at the boost and the lift that it can give you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A few years ago, I went to a women's networking event, but there were about 400 women and it was over 5 days. And I remember after the first day, my husband called me. He's like, are you okay? Did you leave your room today? Because he knows how shy I can be. And I was like, yeah, actually, I haven't been to my room. It's been so amazing. And you just get carried along, and we're
Yeah,
nurturers naturally, aren't we? So
we are.
felt so at home and just met so many incredible people. And most of the women there were on their own as well. So it just wasn't weird or awkward or scary at all. So yeah, I love it too.
Mm.
So what do you really want the change to happen as a result of this report that you've put together? And has that changed when you first put this together out of your curiosity to find out what the real situation is? Has your sort of vision for the outcome of the report changed over that time?
Yeah, I think it has. And I would say that I'm a strategic thinker by nature. So I always see the bigger picture. And what happened with this report was that once I'd identified what the situation was through the lived experience of the women that responded, it became clear that as I explored the rest of that space around aging, around longevity, around women in business, What became clear was that it was a much bigger problem, and it's a global problem.
Mm.
So I've been connecting with people in Canada. I had a fantastic meeting last week with somebody who runs a network in America, across America, dealing with these same issues. And so it's the space has suddenly got a lot bigger. And so what I've got to try and do now is to look at the gap, I suppose, that Refirement UK will slot into and will start to address. And I am making headway with that. But I think for me, it is about giving that real practical support and belief to women who get to the age of 55 or over and who think I've still got loads left to give, but I don't know how to do that, and to help and support them to find their way to do that so that this next stage in their life can be filled with adventure and filled with things that fill them up, because they've spent so much time giving to other people. They usually feel fairly empty at that stage. Empty nest syndrome is a classic example. Burnout for people who've got corporate lives and who are juggling other responsibilities. So I want them to get to a stage where there's a place where they can go where, first of all, of their feelings are normalized, so they don't think it's only them. Secondly, they can find a path, because there are loads of paths to get to where they want to go, but they can find their own path. And then they're given the help and support and the wherewithal to actually bring that into reality. So that's the space that we're going to fill. I have got so many plans and so many ideas. The difficulty with me, I have to pace myself. So I'm busy at the moment trying to put together a structure for Refirement UK, because I can't do this on my own. And so I've created an inner circle of people who are tried and trusted connections and contacts to keep me honest and to say, do you know what, you've bitten off a bit more than you can chew there. Let's be realistic what you can achieve this year. So once the structure's in place, then we can start to put a program of things together. But we want to do three things really. We want to reach out to women who are going through this and say, you're not on your own. Come along and have a look at the resources and the information that we've got, because it might help. We want to reach out to policymakers and say things need to change. The governments, successive governments, keep pushing that retirement age further and further towards 70s and beyond. So we're living longer, we are economically active for longer. So we need to be in the game longer. And yet policymakers are not recognising that. So we need them to do the things that need to be done to support us more as we age and want to start businesses or scale businesses. And the third area, I think, is that we need to be challenging commercial companies to provide us with products that are suited to our needs. They don't, if you look at any pension scheme, it does not recognise that for most women, there'll be two breaks in their careers. There'll be a family break where they're having children and bringing children up. But in later life, there may be a break where they're taking care and responsibilities for older siblings or parents. And neither of those sit well with a traditional pension scheme. And it's one of the reasons why lots of people hear about the pay gender gap, but actually the gender pension gap is even bigger. It's really serious. So most men's pension pot, final pension pot, is worth £125,000 more than women's,
Wow.
because of those breaks. So we need to be saying to commercial companies, come on, get your thinking hat on, build pension pots that are fairer to us. Because if we're taking that responsibility, we need that reflected in the pension products that we're buying. And that's just one example. There are others. So those are the sort of three areas that we want to work with. And of course, through the work that we do generically, we are here to smash those stereotypes and say, don't put people in a box before they're ready. If you look around at the world's population, how many versions of normal are there? We all are a version of normal. So this idea that you can group us together and make massive assumptions about us just doesn't hold true anymore. So I want women to stand up, and where they see those stereotypes being propagated, I want them to challenge them and say, actually, that's no longer appropriate. I
Yeah.
remember when I was little, And I had a grandmother who was 60, and she was an old lady. She was an old lady. And now I'm 64 myself, and I'm thinking, oh, gosh, I don't look or feel like that. And I look around at people like Helen Mirren and Fonda and Cher, and I think to myself, do you know what? Those old age stereotypes just really are not fit for purpose. So we should be challenging them, and we need to be stand up. We stand up and be counted. We need to challenge them because nobody else will on our behalf. So
Yeah.
we need to say, actually, that's not right.
Yeah, totally agree there. And I love the Emily in Paris series, and the actress that plays Sylvie, she runs her own business. She
Yeah.
is so elegant, so sexy, and she's 61. I love that there are more and more women breaking that mold and being supported in doing so. Well
Yes.
done to the
Yeah.
program for not going for some younger women in that space. So we'll get there, and I'm sure the listeners are going to be really fired up, re-fired up even
And do you
to
know what? I
be.
just need to just pick up on something that you've said. So
Yeah.
lots of women talk about French women as being the epitome. They're always so elegant, they've always got it so together, and all of this. And that is absolutely true. And I think one of the biggest differences between continental women and British women is that they are taught to be comfortable in their own skin, and they're taught to be confident and to have a voice. And I think for decades, British women have not. And I know that's controversial because lots of women are like, well, you can't say that. But actually, that's my experience. I'm not saying that of everyone, but I think there is a real common thread. And we do need to have confidence in our ability. We need to stand up and be counted. And so, for me, one of the biggest things that British women need to stop doing is they need to stop apologising. They say sorry for everything, even stuff that isn't their fault. And we just have to stop it. You don't see French women apologising. They're confident. I think we've got a lot to learn from that inbuilt self-confidence that many continental women have. Not all, but many continental women have.
Yeah, and I live on the continent in French-speaking Switzerland, and one big difference I noticed, I moved here when I was 29, and I remember on the plane coming over here reading the back page of, I think it was Cosmo or something, and it was saying, here's a list of 20 things you shouldn't do over 30. And one of them was rollerblading. But then here, and I still see this to this day, I saw that very weekend when I landed, I saw a family. It had the kids, it had the mum, it had the grandmother, the grandfather, all rollerblading along the lake. And you see all generations skiing, hiking, cycling, being active. So I thought that was quite interesting. We're much more told in the UK, oh, we don't do this now, you're old.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
When with that message just doesn't arrive here, or this is what you should be wearing. And here it's like you wear what you want to wear. And
yeah.
so it's very different. Yeah.
Mm.
So what can listeners do to help support this retirement movement that you're creating?
Yes, yes, there absolutely is. So the first thing is that you can register on the site. It's free to register, and you will then get a monthly newsletter, which keeps you up to date with everything that's happening in this space. Not just the work that we're doing, but the work that others are doing in this space. And we have a feature in the newsletter that looks at the movers and shakers. So who are the people that are really starting to disrupt this whole thinking around age in this way, and particularly around entrepreneurism? So that's the first thing you can do. The website is www.refirement.uk. So get on, register. You can also download a copy of the research report if you're interested and want to read the background to that as well. So that's the first thing that you can do. We're 12 weeks old. We've started this from absolute raw energy and passion. So we're looking to try and raise some money to do all of the things that we want to do, because we've got marketing campaigns and things that we need to be doing to spread the message. So if you want to make a donation, doesn't matter how small, you can do that also on the website and help to fill our coffers so that we can expand our website and start to do some of the development work that we want to do. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, and this is a little bit more personal, I would say, that in order to support and help Refirement UK, do some work on yourself. Do some work around the things that we've talked about today. Find out what your passion is. Find out what floats your boat. Think about how you would like your later years to look. What would you like refinement to mean for you? And talk about it. Talk about it on your social media. If you're a writer, do an article or a blog about it. Because the more ideas that are populating this space, the more the message starts to hit home with everybody. And you never know when something that comes out of your head is going to inspire somebody else to go off and do that. Because none of us are tired out. None of us are ready to, hang up our whatever it is, our laptop, and take on a life of sedentary bliss. We've all got things that we still want to do, and sharing those gets that message out that it's okay to feel like that. And our strap line is absolutely true. We are for women who want to rock but not in a chair. We've still got things to do, still got things to prove, still got people that we want to help. So go out and do that. That's a great way of supporting the work of Refirement UK.
Yeah, amazing. And on the investment point, if anyone is looking to raise investment, we had a conversation on the podcast with David Pugh just before the summer. He's a specialist in creating pitch decks that actually get investment. So he gave some great advice on how we can raise investment and what women can do as well. And partly that comes down to something we were talking about earlier, is like, we have to be courageous as well. Women don't ask. And it is part of the problem of women not getting funded is they're not asking for the funding. So
Absolutely right. Can I just share a story with your listeners?
yes, of course. We love
Just
stories.
if you didn't believe, or if you don't believe that this stuff makes a difference, let me just give you an example. So a month ago, there is an organisation called Innovate UK. They're part of the R&D government body that promotes research and innovation. And they were given a pot of money, £4.5 million, to award 50 grants to female entrepreneurs to get businesses off the ground. And they made a decision, so that they've been given that specifically to really try and ignite female entrepreneurs. And they made an announcement about 5 weeks ago that they were only going to award 25 of those grants. They didn't say why they'd made that decision, and they didn't say what they were going to do with the money that they hadn't allocated. But that was the decision that came out. In the space of a weekend, social media lit up, and lots of us working in this space were outraged by that. So we galvanised, we got together, we created a campaign, we wrote letters to our MPs, we wrote letters to Innovate UK. And my local MP was one of the ones who picked up on this. And she hadn't done a maiden speech yet, so she couldn't ask a question in the House. So she found somebody else who could. This all happened over a weekend. Between them, on the Monday, they orchestrated it so that the Secretary of State asked a question in the House of Parliament as to where this decision had come from and why it had happened, specifically as it was intended to try and ignite women's entrepreneurship. As a direct result of that, Innovate UK reversed their decision. They said that they would allocate the other 25 grants, and more to the point, opened up a dialogue with some of those key movers and shakers to sit with them and understand what the barriers were so that this didn't happen again. So to all of your listeners, if you think you don't matter, if you think you can't make a difference, don't underestimate the power of how strong we are together. As a voice, we are much stronger and much more influential if we work together. And it's what women are good at. It's one of our superpowers. So for those of you who are sitting there thinking, well, what can little old me do? Well, do you know what? You can do a lot. And if I'd have sat there and thought that, then refinement wouldn't even be on the horizon. So yeah, it's sometimes it's about get over yourself. And if you've got something that you want to say, have the courage and find the forum and just say it. because you never know the power and the difference that you can make.
Yeah. And if you don't have the courage, find someone that will stand by your side of you and give you that courage. One of my clients, she knows that she struggles with courage. So she never goes into a room on her own. She always has 3 other people. They're imagined, completely imagined, like different personalities that she knows would support her. And they go with her wherever she goes. And that's enough to give her the courage. So find the way that will give you that courage, because as you say, we need all of our voices out there making this change happen. Wendy, thank you so much for so much inspiration and advice, and for sharing the vision for Refirement UK. I'll put all of those links underneath the episode so people can click through and come and join the mission as well. So thank you so much.
Lovely. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have found this episode inspiring and empowering, and you're all ready to go out there, share your voice, build the business of your dreams, and empower others alongside you as well. Do come and share your thoughts in the Dream Clients Club. You'll find us at melittacampbell.com/club. And as I mentioned earlier, within that club, you also find a community, weekly live trainings with me around how to market and communicate your value with ease and authenticity. We have the Magnetic Messages Challenge, replays there for you to watch so you can start attracting more of your dream clients in a way that feels really natural for you and impactful for them. So do come and join us there. And if you did enjoy the show, I would love it if you could leave a review for the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really does mean a lot to me personally, but also it helps grow the show and makes it easier for other female entrepreneurs to find the show and feel inspired and empowered and to grow through the content shared by myself and my guests. Meantime, I'll be back here, same time, same place next week with more tools, tips, and inspiration to help you grow your business. So I look forward to seeing you then. Meantime, have a brilliant week. Bye.